The council meeting will please come to order. If you would, please stand for the invocation by Councilwoman Ortiz and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we could bow our heads for prayer. Heavenly Father, we come to you today when we say thank you. We thank you for our city. We thank you for all that you've done in our city. We thank you for jobs. We thank you for the young people that are here today, the Boy Scouts. We ask that you put your loving arms around them and continue to guide them in a positive path. Oh, Heavenly Father, we ask that every home that's represented in here today that you just touch. We ask that you give us knowledge and understanding as we go through the budget process. And Lord, we just can't thank you enough for all that you've done for our city. And we ask a special blessing on other cities that are going through, whether it's debt or whether it's danger. We ask that you put your loving arms around our emergency personnel. We thank you. In the name of Jesus I pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have one proclamation this evening, and it is a pleasure to do this. We have one of the most significant events occurring in Topeka, starting this weekend into the next couple of weeks, and that is the World's Horseshoe Tournament. We have players from Norway, Canada, the United States. There are 1,404 entries, the largest number of entries in 17 years. The seventh largest world tournament that has ever been held. And we'll have a proclamation, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it. With me here is Terry Cuthbertson, who is responsible for putting much of this together. And on this side is Ryan Russell, that we will talk more about in just a minute. We'll do a proclamation first, and then give a little bit more background on Ryan. Whereas the first World Horseshoe Tournament was held in Kansas in 1909 in Bronson. And whereas Topeka has a proud tradition of producing outstanding horseshoe pitchers of all ages, and whereas after 106 years, the state of Kansas is once again hosting the World Horseshoe Tournament in the capital city, and whereas the World Horseshoe Tournament will bring 1,004 pitchers and approximately 4,000 visitors from the United States, Canada, and Norway, and whereas the World Horseshoe Tournament activities begin on July 11 and run through July 25 at the Kansas Expo Center, now therefore I, Larry Wolgass, Mayor of the City of Topeka, do hereby proclaim the month of July 2015 as World Horseshoe Pitching Month in Topeka, and call upon all citizens of Topeka to recognize the historic significance of this event and welcome the 2015 World Horseshoe pitchers and visitors to our great city. And Terry, would you want to describe a little bit more of the background of what all is happening?
Yeah, we're very excited to be hosting this, and thanks to our Topeka Horseshoe Club doing a lion's share of the work. We also have the Kansas Horseshoe Pitchers Association helping us because we have a relatively small club to host this. And last year, 2014, Buffalo, New York held this event. They had 99 members in their club, quite a bit larger than our club. But we're going to put on an awesome program, and we're going to have an outstanding performance. And we have some outstanding Kansas pitchers. Top pitcher in Kansas was going to be here tonight, but he couldn't make it. But you want to watch for him, anybody coming out to watch the event. His name is Roger Vogel. He averages 81% ringers. That's 81 ringers out of 100. We also have one of the top cadets. This is going to be the largest cadet group they've ever seen at the World Tournament. Cadets are 12 and under. Ryan is 10 years old. He's our top pitcher in our Topeka club, and he is number 10 in the United States in the cadets division. He pitches 43% ringers. Awesome job, Ryan.
You got a standing ovation. So When will Ryan be pitching?
Ryan, you have the schedule?
Thursday and Friday at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Whoa, 8 o'clock in the morning on Thursday. Now, how do you do this? Do a demonstration. How do you do a pitch?
Turns around once, and then when you let go, it's like this. And it'll turn a quarter of a turn again, which should make it go around the stake.
Go ahead. Perfect forward. Perfect forward, right? Now, ESPN.
As Ryan said, he's pitching on the 16th and the 17th. That's when all the juniors and cadets are pitching. However, we have, for the first time coming to Topeka, ESPN Sports Center. And they are going to televise on Saturday those juniors that get to move up. There'll be only a few juniors in each group. 8 cadets will be moving up. I believe it's 8 junior boys and 8 junior girls. They'll be moving up to pitch off on Saturday morning. ESPN Sports Center is going to be at the Landon Arena. They've set up they're going to have their camera set up. And one of the things they told me when they left, when they came out here to get this all organized, is can you fill those seats on the east side of Landon Arena? So I have my work cut out for us because they want a full house on 8 o'clock when they turn that on live on the world. Live broadcast, ESPN Sports Center. We're supposed to be cheering these guys on, and we're going to have hopefully, they'll be long enough that we actually see the finals on live TV.
Not this Saturday.
Not this Saturday, that's the 18th.
Okay.
Saturday the 18th. Now, we kick it off this Saturday with a warm-up, they call it, and we're also going to recognize our sponsors. We're going to have a celebrity pitch. Then on Sunday, there'll be a doubles, and we're doing a fundraiser for Gage War Memorial out there. We're trying to raise money for the homage statue, if you know about that. We're trying to raise $90,000 for that, so we've asked the NHPA to help us with that. On Monday, that's the kickoff for the actual World Tournament, and our Honorable Mayor Wogas will be throwing the first horseshoe pitch out there at 10 o'clock.
Ryan's helping.
That'll be at 10 a.m., so we want to be sure to come out for that. But it's going to be a fun event, and we're really excited to be having everybody come, and especially ESPN Sports Center. We really want to do a good job with them, but they're excited about coming. And actually, I got a phone call the other day from a gentleman from Olathe who's driving home. He says, ESPN called me and told me to come over here. I'll be here all day taking pictures downtown Topeka, all around Topeka. And I said, finally, at the end of the day, we got ready to leave. I said, what are you going to do with that? He says, can you believe I got hundreds of pictures, and that's going to be just a 60-second intro to when they start the live broadcast on the 18th. So, awesome.
Now, you have members of your club here.
Yeah,
Let's
I'd like to
have them stand up, please.
Here's the horseshoe club.
Thank you.
We're putting them to work at tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. We got to build 132 horseshoe pits in the exhibit hall and Landon Arena. So we got our work cut out for us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ryan. Okay, Topeka, we have to be there after Saturday. And what time, Terry, in the morning? It's early, isn't
8
it?
o'clock.
8 o'clock. Okay. And City Manager, we have a presentation, if you would introduce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask Whitney Dameron, the city's lobbyist, to step forward. He was going to present a legislative update, but he has also decided to give some lessons in horseshoe pitching today.
Ryan, there is a fee, but
Okay, we'll do the legislative update instead.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, city manager, and members of the staff. I am Whitney Dameron. I'm the contract lobbyist for the city of Topeka. I know several on the council I've not met. My wife and I are both lobbyists for the city. We're both contract lobbyists, work in the State House, and we share one client, and that is the city of Topeka. Otherwise, we're separate entities and do separate things. And she had business in Kansas City and couldn't be here today, but I am pleased to appear in front of the council, having survived the longest legislative session in the history of our state. I also survived the second longest in 2002, which was 107 days. This one was 114 days. Obviously, the issue that took the longest to resolve was closing the budget gap that the state has had. We went into this fiscal year with the state needing to raise some $825 million, give or take. They found about $425 million through kind of the usual suspects. They went to KDOT, robbed there heavily. We've seen impacts on local units of government, on some funds for maintenance and so forth, some projects that have been pushed off, and it's going to have an impact on both larger communities and small. But that is where they got a big chunk of the money. They've done that to the tune of about $2 billion in the last 5 years. We also saw some maneuvering of some Medicaid dollars. The state does not take the Medicaid funding that some of the other states have taken, but through the Affordable Care Act, they've created some efficiencies in Medicaid prescription reimbursements, so there was some money taken from there and a few other things. A lot of that was one-time money. It's going to be a real challenge if the budget numbers don't continue to, if the budget numbers don't come back going into fiscal year 2017. The legislature did do a 2-year budget cycle, so if revenues meet projections for the next 2 years, we'll be reasonably okay. If they don't, then we're going to be looking probably at another difficult session next year with more spending cuts, more potential tax increases. One thing that was left in the budget was for the governor to make another $50 million in cuts. He was given kind of some expanded authority to make allotments, and that is not something that the governor wanted to do, but in order to balance the budget, he is going to be charged with doing that or pushing that off to the 2016 legislative session. We also had a school finance decision that came down here in the last week. It was a lower court decision. It will go up to the Supreme Court. See some expedition at that level, and very well could see some significant financial challenges coming back to the state of Kansas, potentially even requiring a special session before 2016, which would be very challenging, I think, for our state to deal with. Just highlighted the tax plan that did pass, increased our state sales tax from 6.15 to 6.5%. There was talk during the session about reducing it some portion on food. That went by the wayside. Suggestion was they would like to do that in an election year when they can get more mileage out of that with the public. I don't know that that's really going to generate a lot of votes if they have the opportunity to do that. I'm not sure if the budget will allow any kind of a reduction in state revenues, but we shall see. That was worth about $165 million. Increased the tobacco taxes on cigarettes by 50 cents a pack. That's worth about $40 million. Retained the exemption on pass-through business entities, LLCs, partnerships, sole proprietorships, and the like. That was kind of the line in the sand for the governor, that he would not accept any changes to that tax plan that he led in 2012 getting passed through the legislature. That, as we know, currently exempts some 330,000 entities in Kansas from paying any state income tax. Retained the food sales tax credit program. And then something obviously of great concern to municipalities, both cities and counties, was the imposition of a tax lid. We fought that legislation in years past. We have generally done a pretty good job, the cities, League of Kansas Municipalities, pushing back on those kinds of things. When they come up for a hearing, cities, counties, school districts come in and have generally had a good opportunity to make their case. The grassroots is able to work, and city council members, county commissioners, local elected officials have been able to put pressure on legislators, and those things have gone by the wayside. 2015 was a little unique. That came as a floor amendment several weeks into a 6-week veto session. About 4.5 weeks into it, actually, where it started bubbling up. It came as an amendment from a senator from southeast Kansas. Attracted some attention, some support from people who are otherwise inclined not to support any kind of a tax bill. Made it very difficult to attack that from a grassroots standpoint, because by that time, secretaries in the State House have been sent home. No one there to answer the phone, no one there to look at the emails. Legislators might receive 50 to 150 emails a day. Senators, perhaps even more. The phone calls and so forth, and it serves to shield them from the public, quite frankly, communicating with them, whether it's elected officials or others. The lobbyists were working the State House and the municipal interest as well. We had initial success with the House that drew the line in the sand, said they would not accept that. Ultimately, when governor's office and others start weighing in about the bigger picture being close that $450 million budget gap, this was kind of a side issue that didn't move the numbers, and ultimately it was included in the tax package. It was intended to go into effect January 1, 2018. It was drafted incorrectly. The way it was passed, it would have gone into effect July 1, 2015. As we know, the sides kind of agreed to stick with the commitment, both sides, the people who proposed the tax lid and those who opposed it, and had an opportunity to amend that date back to the January 1, 2018 date in the adjournment sine die here in the last week. To their credit, Kansas Association of Realtors, which pushes that issue real hard, came in and said, we support moving the date to 2018, even though they're very much in support of tax lids. They did, however, say in the same communication they sent to all legislators that they would be back in 2016 and urged that that date be moved up. So obviously, cities and counties are going to have a tax lid debate again in 2016. It's unfortunate that, kind of an editorial opinion, that cities and counties and school districts even get abused for the property tax issue when the legislature has done so much to take away the tools that you have to spread the taxes around. We've seen obviously the repeal of the property tax on machinery and equipment. We saw last year the repeal of the mortgage registration fees. We've seen reduced funding to schools. We've seen elimination of LAVTR years ago, never to come back, and now we're seeing money taken out of KDOT. And in order to fill the streets, the roads, the potholes, the cities and counties are having to step up their spending there. So it's no wonder local taxes feel that pressure that comes with that, but that certainly will be an issue that comes up in the next legislative session. A couple of the bigger issues we were involved with this year included annexation. We saw a rather innocuous annexation bill pre-filed in December of 2014 because of an issue in Columbus County, Cherokee County, with the city of Galena. Had a landowner essentially wanted to give a piece of property to the city. The city turns around and annexes that through an island annexation procedure, and then that property owner develops a landfill on it. And that set county commission and others kind of all up in arms, and they looked, and there was not really a clear way to resolve that under current law. And so Representative Mike Hauser from Columbus pre-filed a bill. The league, some other city representatives met with him in the process, and because what we've seen with annexation legislation is kind of a localized issue comes to Topeka, and you get this broad effort to resolve an issue that affects 650 cities instead of just the jurisdiction where we're having some problems. We've seen that in with the city of Topeka. We've had suggestions that the city was prepared to annex thousands and thousands of homes outside the city limit, and that obviously was not an accurate position, but we've had to battle that in the legislative process. We've seen efforts to do a narrow strip of land annexation like the casino from Mulvane in Sumner County, sometimes called snake annexation. There's been restrictions placed upon that. So we worked with Representative Hauser, got the bill in shape to where everyone pretty much said this is okay, including the League of Kansas Municipalities. Passed the House overwhelmingly, went to the Senate Local Government Committee. Hearings went fine there. Everyone was in agreement what the bill should look like. Chairman indicated he might have some ideas for the bill. He chose not to offer those in his own committee, but he brought an amendment on the floor. We saw an amendment added to a bill with 23 favorable votes, about 10 or 12 against, and a number who just passed that would have eliminated unilateral annexation in Kansas. And then we saw a House chairman who tried on not less than 3 occasions to have that approved in the House chamber, even though he had told the members of the chamber after the first attempt that if they turned it down, he would not bring it back, and he instead would go back to the original intent of the bill. Saw it come again, and we're able to turn that back. And I describe that because the annexation bill and the property tax lid bill are two examples of things that come up on floor amendments. And it's very difficult to mobilize the grassroots and get the people to see what's going on, bring in the conferees in the light of day, and have an actual hearing with proponents and opponents, have the media present and so forth. And that became a serious challenge again to try to push back on the annexation issue. Ultimately what passed was Representative Hauser's language, but I expect we're going to have an annexation bill next year from at least the House chairman who will introduce that bill and express his opinions on the use of unilateral annexation by cities. One of the bigger issues we were involved with this year is the abandoned housing issue. As some members of the council may recall, we were involved with an interim committee in 2014. Seemed to get a lot of traction in the process. We had seen that bill pass in the House before, so we took the bill to the Senate. Representative Stan Fraunfelter from Wyandotte County has been really the lead on that issue, and other municipalities, including the unified government, have worked to try to shore that up and help move that along. Took the bill to the Senate Committee on Commerce this year rather than local government because it got stalled in local government last year. Had the bill assigned to a subcommittee. Had a very difficult subcommittee from at least outward appearances of people who are not generally inclined to support this kind of legislation. Parties came together, including Kansas Association of Realtors, Kansas Bankers Association, the Landlords Association, put together a bill that everyone seemed to agree could be helpful. Subcommittee report came to the full committee recommended that bill to the floor. Ultimately, that bill was never run on the floor of the Senate because of pressure from certain interest groups who pushed back rather strongly on that issue and have some means of communicating with Senate leadership. So created a challenge for getting that passed. There is a bill in the House that's kind of a companion bill. We did not push to have hearings on that bill in the House because of where we were at in the Senate. I think it's something that can be revisited. I think it's something that there's an opportunity to visit with some of the interest groups who pushed back and try to further demonstrate that it's abandoned property we're after. We're not after dilapidated property. I know the city managers made it clear in legislative hearings that we have a good code enforcement entity here in the city of Topeka to deal with those kinds of things. That's not what we're after. And it creates obviously frustration at the city council level and creates frustration in the legislative process of people who support trying to help communities. Election laws, as we know, elections for municipalities were changed this legislative session. There was pressure or proposals to move municipal elections from spring and odd numbered years to fall and even numbered years and make them partisan. The compromise that came from the House was we will make them nonpartisan, we will keep them in even numbered years, and we will put them at the top of the ballot. Obviously that creates major problems for municipal candidates, school boards, to get their message out when you have $25, $35 million spent in the state of Kansas, for example, in 2014 on the gubernatorial and U.S. Senate races. It's difficult for people to buy advertising on television. We don't see a whole lot of that with city council races, but newspapers and so forth. Pretty strong pushback from entities like League of Kansas Municipalities, school boards, and the like. There was concern by some of the proponents that we're going to lose the bill altogether. Ended up negotiating with the League of Kansas Municipalities is about what would be a compromise that might be acceptable. Ultimately, what came about was essentially an agreement not to oppose if municipal elections were moved to the fall of odd-numbered years and remain nonpartisan. As a result, we're going to see some terms extended. That legislation was passed. Elections will work very similar to partisan elections. We'll have elections in the first Tuesday of August, the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November, in odd-numbered years, and terms of office will start, I believe, the second Monday of the new year in January. Probably a few years down the road, we'll see further efforts to make them partisan in even-numbered years, but that's for down the road, I suppose. A couple of other bills we were involved with this year, something that came out of the City of Manhattan was proposals to require any public building commission project to have a vote of the people as opposed to a protest petition. Once again, a local issue brought to Topeka. The proposed solution has statewide application. We expressed concerns with that. Relatively low signature requirement on public building commission protest petitions, only 5%. So that was retained in the bill. The allowable time to gather signatures was increased from 30 days to 60 days. There were proposals to prohibit municipalities from hiring lobbyists, from placing restrictions on municipalities from having even in-house employees who lobbied, from paying dues to organizations that have lobbyists. So if you have engineers on staff who are members of a state engineering association, that association lobbies, restrictions from that, or notice requirements, publication requirements, which would probably be extremely difficult for a good number of cities to identify every employee that they have, what organization they might belong to, whether they're receiving any kind of a reimbursement for involvement in professional associations and the like. The way the bill came about in the end was to require the lobbyist, myself, to file a report with the Secretary of State's office starting January 1, 2017, the amount of funds that I receive from a municipality as a lobbyist. It's never been, quite frankly, an objection to mine. Our fee typically gets published when the contract comes up. But I think people wanted a central database they can go to and probably then do all the math and come back and suggest the millions of dollars that are being spent on these things in the state of Kansas. But I would suggest disarmament by municipalities is probably not going to serve you well. Economic development, there were no changes in star bonds. There was obviously a legislative post-audit that City of Topeka was interested in related to Heartland Park. Nothing of substance really came out of that. We saw legislation dealing with scrap metal passed. There will be a comprehensive database created by the Kansas Attorney General starting July 1, 2016, increased penalties for repeat offenders and so forth. Scrap metal dealers will have to belong or pay a fee that helps supports that system. We saw legislation to essentially restrict municipal bail bonds. Worked with City Manager Judge Miller. We addressed that issue in the legislative process, and that bill didn't go anywhere. Legislation, as Councilwoman Hiller is aware of, relating to bikeways, that was introduced in the House Transportation Committee. That bill had a hearing. That bill was not brought up for consideration. A couple of other bills on increase the rate for delinquent property tax. That bill was heard in the House Taxation Committee, went to the floor, was never run on the floor. House leadership, and to a lesser extent Senate leadership, were very restrictive on a number of bills they ran on the floor, including nothing related to taxes. They never even ran a budget subject to amendment, debate, and roll call on the floor of the House. And unfortunately, we've seen the calendar managed in that way. We didn't really even see a tax bill in the Senate put together that way. It was primarily put together through conference committee negotiations back and forth. And that is to, quite frankly, restrict public debate and amendments that people don't want to have to vote on any variety of issues, including Medicaid expansion and tax policy and so forth. There's a minor bill on clarifying application of the Kansas Tort Claims Act regarding municipalities with an intent to sue by an employee. That was passed, non-controversial, but something I know the City Attorney's Office was interested in. Probably the next few weeks, House and Senate leadership will get together and approve some interim study topics. They may put that off till even August or September. It's not an election year, but the budget has restricted those kinds of hearings and committees in the past few years. Something we're going to see coming out of the tax bill, I think, into 2016 is renewed effort to scrutinize sales tax exemptions. There was a proposal that had some legs for a short period of time in the tax bill to essentially sunset all sales tax exemptions and require groups to come back in and reprove them, to ask the legislature to renew their sales tax exemption. If they do that, professional services, I'm sure, gets carved out. Some of the major issues get carved out, perhaps sales tax on residential utilities and the like. Those are the big ticket items. The nonprofits that do quite a bit of work in communities, those will be the ones that probably will see sales tax exemptions repealed. That potentially has a big impact on social services and what cities will be asked to do. So those kinds of things will likely be up in the 2016 legislative session. That's a run through of what we're involved with this year. I'd be happy to respond to questions.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. In general, you could say that municipalities had some more restrictions, in a sense, put on them, the property tax lid, the state stepping in and determining when we have elections. We escaped other items that could have been more harmful or as harmful to municipalities. We were able to prevent them from becoming law. Is there any areas where the municipalities gained or won in any area?
I think the municipalities increased their, credibility is not the right term. I know there have been some changes at the League of Kansas Municipalities. There's kind of a change in direction. I saw better communication from the league and other municipalities. I saw greater effectiveness in the legislative process. Obviously, it's still a difficult and challenging legislature for municipalities. There is this tendency to dictate to local units of government in areas of policy, and primarily tax policy. And that continues to be a big challenge. And when you choke off revenue streams, both at the state level and the local level, locals have very few resources to go out and try to either spread kind of the tax burden. You don't have the ability to impose motor fuels, and you have certain restrictions on sales tax and the like, and a lot of communities just don't have room, no matter how high they take their sales tax, to generate a significant amount of income. They don't have an income tax, obviously, and it's property taxes. So when people have property taxes that increase, they complain to their legislators, and their response is, okay, we'll put a tax lid on it. We'll keep them from raising taxes, but then you're not able to provide services. I know one of the biggest challenges that we're going to have going forward, not necessarily Topeka, Shawnee County, but the 90 counties in the state that have oil and gas production have seen significant reductions in their property tax valuations because of the price of oil going from $102 a barrel in Kansas to now it's about $46 a barrel. And those are having dramatic impacts on a lot of rural counties. They're just not going to have the money to provide the services they have.
Council members, questions, comments? Councilwoman Schwartz?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll be real quick. The $49 million that is in the school case, what's the timeline of that to go to the Supreme Court? There's no chance that their special session would be called, or it'll probably be coming in the 2016 session?
I think that's up in the air. I think there's some who believe we could have a special session in 2015. Or we could see a decision come down that requires some kind of an attention. Obviously, the local court said that the state needs to put in $49 million in the last fiscal year, or this as soon as possible. I think that question gets teed up rather quickly, but they also had other pieces of that opinion that go back and impact their original decision, which continues to ratchet up the pressure on the courts.
although it seems the legislature just left town, I know we start thinking about next session. And I know in the municipalities, they are working, and in August, the league has its committee meetings, hearings to hear from municipalities on the issues for next session. So I know we have to start reviewing again what we want our issues to be for,
We
on
received,
behalf of the city, to take to the legislature.
we received an email from the executive director of the league this past week asking us to solicit the city for the priorities, and they're looking at revamping their entire list of municipal policy priorities. I indicated that I thought it was likely that the city would be interested in seeing the abandoned housing issue elevated to something that more cities were involved with, and with the league taking kind of a leadership role in spreading that word. Asked how we should get that formalized to them, and indicated that if we had really kind of an informal note to that effect, that it would be appropriate. So I will visit with the city manager and see what we need to do to make that happen, assuming it is a priority for the city for 2016.
Other questions, comments? Deputy Mayor Hiller?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for bringing up the issue of the August time coming up, because we often talk about hitting that deadline and we typically don't. And one of the things about that August time is that it's an opportunity to work with other cities rather than send you in all by yourself with our issues. I recall that the bikeways ran into an issue that it really needed to have been vetted with other communities and other organizations statewide before it went in. I think we learned that on that one. Are there other issues that we should realize would make it a little more compelling to get back with our agenda by August, so you could work, and the mayor, with other cities?
Well, I'd be happy to make some recommendations based upon the 2015 legislative agenda and looking at what some of the other cities have been involved with in that regard. Certainly some of the issues that we saw this year that were challenging for cities that we see coming back refocused attention on the annexation issue, property tax lid issue, and developing some stakeholders, both inside and outside the municipal area, to come into the legislative process, I think would be helpful.
When would it be best that we get that together to go to you and for the mayor to be prepared?
Well, the league's timeframe is in August, September, and then they come together in October, I believe, with their annual meeting and put their package together. So certainly working on some things in the next 60 days would be helpful.
Yeah, because I was thinking there are work sessions that you said in August. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there others? Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you for
It's
your time.
appreciated. That being the presentations, we will proceed with the roll call.
Mayor Wolgast.
Here.
Council members Hiller.
Here.
Clear.
Here.
Ortiz. Shum.
Here.
De La Isla.
Here.
Jensen.
Present.
Schwartz.
Here.
Cohen.
Here.
And Harmon.
There are no additions or deletions to the agenda, and there is no executive session tonight. So we will proceed with the consent agenda, if the clerk would read.
A is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Crystal Irwin to the Topeka Human Relations Commission to fill an unexpired term ending February 28, 2016. B are minutes of the regular meeting of June 16, 2015, and there are no applications.
Thank you. That is the consent agenda. Councilman Schwartz.
Move approval?
Councilman Schwartz moves approval. Councilwoman De Isla seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no. I vote yes.
We have 10 yes.
And having voted yes, the consent agenda is approved as read. I would like to introduce Crystal Irwin. If you would stand, please. Crystal is the person that we have just approved the appointment to the Human Relations Commission. And I want to also point that I know we all have trouble sometimes getting people to fill all the positions. Crystal was wanted to become more interested in the events in the city and went on the website and looked at various opportunities and self-nominated, and happens to be in Councilwoman Schwartz's district, and Councilwoman Schwartz was kind enough to nominate her. So thank you. It shows that there are people out here who want to serve, and we certainly encourage that. Thank you very much for your service. We'll proceed with the action items. 6A is the expenditures.
A is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Jim Colson allowing and approving city expenditures for the period of May 2 through May 29, 2015, and enumerating said expenditures therein.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Approval would authorize city expenditures in the amount of $13,289,100.27.
Okay. Councilwoman Ortiz moves to approve the expenditures. Councilman Cohen seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no. I vote yes.
We have 10 yes.
And having voted yes, the expenditures are approved. That completes the action items for the evening. And we go to announcements. First, I would like to introduce some Boy Scouts that are here this evening. I think there are 3 from Troop 13 of Highland Park United Methodist Church. If you would stand, First Class Diego Dominguez, First Class Caleb Griesacker, Star Christopher Wells, and also we have Andrew Philman, Eagle Scout from another troop joining, and also their Scoutmasters Anthony Dominguez and Cameron Wells. Thank you very much for being here. And you don't have to stay for the whole meeting whenever you feel that you have enough of this citizenship role that we play. Okay, proceeding then, we'll look at the agenda for next week.
Next week's agenda includes, on the action items, we will consider allocations for the 2016 social services and contracted services in the amount of $633,178. We'll also consider allocations for the 2016 transient guest tax funds in the amount of $2.7 million. And then we will have an ordinance for closure of the Eastgate Tax Increment Financing District.
Thank you. For the announcements, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first announcement, I'd like to announce that yesterday we initiated the 51st Law Enforcement Academy. There was an employment orientation, had an opportunity to meet with 27 new recruits, and today they began their academy training, and they look like a serious group of guys, and I know they're in for some hard work over the next period of time. The Topeka Zoo had the opportunity to say goodbye to 3 African painted dogs. I know that was in the story, but they're being relocated to the zoo in Pueblo, Colorado. And this is the initial step towards the construction of the $3.3 million Camp Cowabunga, which is going to be the Africa compound and development at the zoo. So it's very exciting. We're going to actually get additional painted dogs when this is completed. And the last thing, I just want to make reference to the new monitors that many of you are able to look and see without straining your neck or look like you're looking away from other people. I want to recognize Ronaldo Davis worked very diligently well through the night over the last couple of days to get this set up. And the installation of the monitors was also a lot of technology work, enhancements that's gone into this. I think there's going to be a few hiccups in terms of playback over the next week. We're continuing to work the new system with the old, but we continue to work to make sure that what is said in this meeting is very easily heard and seen by residents at home, so we continue to make these enhancements. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
And it also is to make all of us look better, younger.
Well, I saw me, and I'm not sure it's working.
And honest. All right. Councilwoman Ortiz. Councilman Shum. Councilwoman Isva. Jensen. You're going to break the pattern.
I'm going to break the
Councilwoman
pattern. I never
Schwartz.
give up the chance. Well, this next week, I think, is the Fiesta Mexicana coming up, because I just called and talked to, or left a message with Roxy Ortiz. So I want to make sure everybody gets out to that. And then also next week, before we come back for another council meeting, is Brew at the Zoo. So, and that's this coming Saturday night from 6 to 10 p.m. So I encourage everybody in the city to go to both the Fiesta Mexicana and the Brew at the Zoo. And then this week I had to decide what my jam of Topeka was going to be. And there was a lot to choose from because it was the 4th of July weekend and all the festivities. And I decided that the gem for this week is the Topeka Blues Society. And you can see they had the Spirit of Kansas. They brought in about 30,000 people to the lake this weekend. And their president is Suki Willison, their vice president is Jerry Schmanke, secretary treasurer Karen Osborne, and board members that are expiring this year, that's why I'm saying this is a gem. Paul Schwartz, who's my husband's brother, and Gib Ramirez and Charlie Hearn, and then they have a couple other board members. So a big shout out to, if you didn't get out to the lake this past weekend, it was awesome. And we have several lakes in town, and when we went on our way home, we could see, there's another lake out on the east side of Topeka, Shavara, and then Sherwood had their send-off with their fireworks. So Topeka was well lit up this past weekend, and it was all very nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Cohen, Councilman Harmon.
I wasn't going to say anything, but when I heard the city manager talk about our new television cameras, it reminded me that 10 years ago when I was first sworn in, we had much different audiovisual equipment, and Ruth Moss, who was the city's public information officer, came up to me before the meeting and she said, you know, with your silver hair, if you wear a dark shirt, the camera's not going to know which color to focus on, and you're going to appear to be washed out. And I said, well, Ruth, I hate to tell you this, but I am washed out. No matter what I wear is going to change that. And about a year later, I was walking to one of our retail stores, and this lady went in before me. She stopped and she looked back and she said, "Are you Richard Harmon?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Are you on the city council?" "Yeah." And she said, "Oh, you're much better looking in person than on television." So I have no idea what. Anyway, those when I was listening to the city manager talk about our new system, and it is a wonderful system, and we look much better now. But I think in years past, I think the images that went out, I think, were less than flattering. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Hiller. Councilman Claire.
Yes. I went to the Boys and Girls Club Teen Center grand opening. It was really neat. Those kids are so excited and really enjoy that place, so stop by there if you can. I went to a seminar on human trafficking, and I think we need to keep that very serious in crime, get informed, and know what we need to be aware of. North Topeka West NIA started their SORT grant meetings, and real excited to get that processing going. July 11th, 10:30 is the start of the Fiesta Mexicana Parade. Starts at 4th and Kansas, and you can go to the website, Fiesta Mexicana Topeka 2015, to find out everything about the Fiesta, which begins July 14th through the 18th. And Coffee on Your Corner tomorrow at Bellard Airport Restaurant about the pedestrian master plan at 10 o'clock.
Thank you. Thank you for the information. The other announcement for council members is, the good news is we have another incentive package for the JADO board to consider. The bad news is we have to have another board meeting. It's possibility that will be next Wednesday, a week from tomorrow. It'll be, if it is, it will be posted tomorrow, which will be the time frame 1 week before. So you can put that in your schedule. It's the good news and the bad news. We have to work. That completes the announcements. We'll go to public comment, and the first person is Megan Green.
Good evening. My name is Megan Green. I'm the president of the Fraternal Order Police Auxiliary here in Topeka, and also the wife of Sergeant Jamie Green of the Topeka Police Department. Jamie is on the bicycle unit as well as the response team here in Topeka. Every day, my husband heads out into this scary world to protect our community. He leaves his family at home and misses family functions to do a job that he loves. There is no normal in our life. There are days that I live in fear that I may be the wife whose husband will make that ultimate sacrifice for this great city. However, I know that he is well trained and does everything he can to come home to me at night. Another struggle we have as a law enforcement family is how we are going to pay for those surprise expenses, those unforeseen medical bills, camp for my 2 sons, or those job-related expenses that just seem to pop up. Jamie and other TPD officers deserve a fair pay so we don't have to worry. We worry enough about our husband's safety so we shouldn't also have to worry about how we're going to survive each day. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Next is Jill Chapman.
Hello, thank you very much for listening to me tonight. My name is Jill and my husband is Brian. He has been a police officer and a field training officer for over 11 years. And I am also a member of the Fraternal Order of Police Auxiliary. I wanted to just take a minute to tell you a little bit about what it is like being a police family for us. Aside from the fact that some people hate us just because of the uniform that he wears, there is no normal for us either. There are no weekends for our family, and his days off are even on a constant rotating schedule because of the shift work. When I married into law enforcement, my parents and my sister is also married into law enforcement to help us have our 3 daughters and help them maintain a regular life. I know the longing that my husband has when he has to leave our family's special events, when he has to miss another soccer game, when he had to miss kindergarten graduation. And I know that we are lucky if he gets to swing by on Christmas morning in his patrol car and his stocking hat when his face is red from the cold. I also see the disappointment in my children's faces when they see him go, but I know that they are very proud of him, just like I am very proud of him, even though I feel the fear when he goes to work every day. We put on our brave faces and he goes without complaint because it is also a job that he loves and one that he has wanted his whole life and he works hard at. I'm here to also echo that our officers deserve a fair wage for going out and doing the jobs that they love and for protecting our city. For the sacrifices that they constantly make, both for themselves and for their families and for their children, and for the increasing danger that is happening here in our city, as well as across the country. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. That completes the public comment for tonight. We have no executive session. There being no further business, the meeting is adjourned. And I believe we will then reassemble for a budget committee meeting very shortly.